Someone interesting, they did ask me what my favourite sort of childhood memory was about playing sport.
A photograph starts it. Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, stands in a receiving line, a brooch catching the light on her chest. Someone lays it beside an old photograph of Diana, Princess of Wales, wearing what looks like the same jewel decades earlier. 2 images, 1 caption, and by morning the story has grown far past either picture. The caption claims Princess Catherine saw the brooch and stopped a state banquet cold. No warning. Just a princess who supposedly rose from her chair, and a room that supposedly went silent around her. By the next evening, the claim isn't 1 video anymore. It's a dozen, then more, each one wearing nearly the same words, the same countdown clock, the same breathless voice. Banquet halted. Palace shock. 4 minutes ago. Comment sections fill with outrage on Catherine's behalf, or on Camilla's, depending on which channel a viewer lands on first. Here is where this investigation actually begins. Not with the accusation, with a question almost nobody selling the story bothers to ask: what is the evidence? Hi viewers. Quick question before this case gets moving. When you picture a royal jewel with a real story behind it, is it a brooch, a tiara, or a title that comes to mind first for you? Type your answer below. I want to see where this audience lands. No leaked footage of a halted banquet exists. No named guest has come forward. No credible newsroom, not the BBC, not Reuters, has reported any intervention. And yet by the time most people hear the claim, it already sounds like a verdict, not a rumor. To understand why one piece of jewelry carries this much weight, it helps to know who these 3 women actually are. Diana, Princess of Wales, died in 1997, and in the years since, her memory has grown into something close to sacred for millions who never met her. Camilla, now Queen, spent decades as one of the most unpopular women in Britain before her public image slowly changed. Catherine, Princess of Wales, has spent more than 10 years building an identity of her own, not a copy of Diana's. When a brooch moves from one royal woman's collection into another's, the internet rarely sees fabric and stone. It sees betrayal, or loyalty, or a message being sent inside a room full of cameras. The emotional read and the historical record do not always agree, and that disagreement is exactly where this story lives. Because the real history of this brooch, the dates, the paperwork, the documented owners, tells a very different story than the one currently collecting views, and it starts more than 150 years before either Diana or Camilla was born. The story the internet is telling starts with Catherine and Camilla. The real story starts in 1863, with a woman neither of them ever met. That year, a young Danish princess named Alexandra arrives in Britain to marry the future King Edward VII, then still known as the Prince of Wales, and the ladies of Wales mark the occasion with a jeweled gift built around the Prince of Wales' feathers, the same 3-plume symbol still tied to that title today. It is an old piece, older than the automobile, older than photography as most people know it now. For decades it stays inside the royal vaults, worn rarely, photographed almost never. Its next chapter belongs to Diana. Around the time of her wedding in 1981, the piece reaches her, and she wears it differently than tradition expects, off a necklace chain rather than pinned as a brooch. She wears it to a gala in Vienna in 1986, and again during a state visit to Toronto in 1991. The last confirmed photograph of Diana in the piece dates to April 1996, not long before her divorce from Charles becomes final. After her death in 1997, it returns to the royal collection, the property of the crown rather than any single woman. This detail matters more than almost anything else in this case. The piece was never Diana's to keep, the way a wedding ring or a private letter might be. It belonged, and still belongs, to the institution itself, on loan to whichever royal woman the reigning monarch permits to wear it. That is how it reaches Camilla. She is photographed with it, restyled as a brooch, at a film premiere in 2006, at the Cheltenham Festival in 2012, and at a reception in 2019 marking 50 years since Charles became Prince of Wales. Palace officials, asked about one appearance, said the piece had belonged to the Queen Mother and that Camilla considered it fitting to wear. Jewelry experts have estimated its value anywhere from roughly $135,000 up toward $175,000, depending on the appraisal in the year. In 2019, some royal watchers were furious, arguing the piece belonged with Diana's sons, William and Harry, not the woman Charles married after her. Others pointed out the obvious. It was never Diana's to leave to anyone, so there was nothing to give away in the first place. Then, in November 2022, barely 2 months after William and Catherine became the new Prince and Princess of Wales, Catherine wears the same piece to a state visit for South Africa's president. 3 women, 1 heirloom, 0 ownership disputes on paper. So if nobody stole anything, why does this keep detonating online? 3 women, 1 title, passed hand to hand. That is the real shape of this case, and it has nothing to do with diamonds. Diana became Princess of Wales in 1981 at 20 years old, thrown into a role built centuries before she was born, expected to smile, curtsy, and say almost nothing of substance in public. She broke that mold anyway. She sat with AIDS patients and shook their hands without gloves, at a time when many people still feared the disease could spread through touch. She walked through an active minefield in Angola to campaign against landmines. Royal historians widely credit her with changing what the public expected an English princess to be. Warm, physical, unafraid to touch a stranger's hand on camera. That reputation did not fade after 1997. If anything, distance from her life made the image simpler, and simpler images are easier to defend online. Camilla's path runs in the opposite direction. For years, British tabloids cast her as the reason a fairy tale marriage collapsed, and that reputation followed her for 2 decades. Her rehabilitation was slow by design. Public appearances increased gradually, year after year, almost never rushed. Charity work built up a different kind of record, one measured in decades rather than headlines. By the time of Charles's coronation in May 2023, the palace quietly dropped the word consort from her title, and polling on her public image had shifted considerably from where it stood in the 1990s, though she has never approached Diana's level of public affection. Royal commentators have suggested this gap is part of why any perceived overlap with Diana's belongings draws such a sharp reaction. It is not really about jewelry. It is about 2 very different reputations sitting uncomfortably close together. CNN Yahoo. Catherine occupies a stranger position than either of them. She is not a Windsor by birth, married into the family in 2011, and has spent well over a decade being measured against a woman she never met. Every dress, every hairstyle, every piece of jewelry gets compared to Diana's version of the same role, whether the comparison is fair or not. Unlike Diana, Catherine has had the advantage of time. She has built a public identity around steadiness rather than spectacle. Her early years initiative on child development, a low-drama family life, a marriage now approaching 15 years. Where Diana's story became one of conflict with the institution, Catherine's has become one of working inside it, patiently, year after public year. This is why a brooch can carry so much weight. It is never simply fabric and stone changing hands. Royal jewelry functions as a kind of public language, and every woman who wears a historically loaded piece is making a statement whether she intends to or not. Diana's version of that language was rebellion. Camilla's is survival. Catherine's is continuity. Which raises the real question driving this entire case. Not who is allowed to wear the jewelry. Who gets to decide what the monarchy means next, and who gets left out of that decision entirely? Search for this exact claim right now, and something strange shows up. Not one video, a pattern. Multiple channels, publishing within days of each other, use almost identical language. A princess who halts an event after noticing a piece of jewelry wrapped in a countdown clock in the title. 4 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago. The clock never actually moves forward in any meaningful way because the phrase isn't a timestamp. It's a hook, recycled across accounts that have never spoken to each other, built to catch the same nervous system trick every time. Urgency plus outrage equals a click. This is not a one-off. Fact-checking organizations have already caught this exact genre in the act, more than once. One widely circulated claim alleged Camilla had been thrown out of Buckingham Palace over an affair in stolen jewelry, complete with invented surveillance photographs, invented palace confrontations, and invented details about vault access codes. Fact-checkers went looking for a source. They checked major search engines. They checked established newsrooms. Nothing. No outlet had reported an expulsion, an affair, or a theft, and searches turned up no coverage from any news media outlet anywhere. The only real footage involved was an old, unrelated interview used to open the video before the fabricated narration took over, and similar claims appeared elsewhere with nearly identical content. The claim still spread across multiple channels, wearing nearly identical scripts like a chain letter with better production values. That is the actual machine behind this story, not a jealous princess, not a scheming queen, a production pipeline that takes a real photograph, a real object with real history.
She's an inspirational woman to look up to, obviously to this day, and going forward and things. It is, it's a wonderful family. The members who I've met have achieved a lot, and very inspirational.
And grafts a fabricated confrontation onto it, because fabricated confrontations perform better than the truth. Here's what makes this particularly effective. None of these videos state the claim as 100% confirmed fact, not in so many words. They use phrases like reports suggest, sources claim, insiders say. That phrasing sounds careful. It sounds like journalism, but dressing up an invented scene in careful language doesn't make the scene any less invented. It just makes the invention harder to challenge, because the creator can always retreat to, "I never said it was true." Royal reporters who actually cover the palace beat, the ones who show up to briefings and file stories under their own names, have a simple standard. If it happened, someone in the room could confirm it. Nobody has. Not a guest, not a staff member, not a single credentialed journalist covering that engagement. So the internet's courtroom reaches its verdict anyway, night after night, one manufactured crisis at a time, while the actual palace calendar keeps running exactly as scheduled. And underneath all of it sits a bigger, quieter story that these channels never touch, because it doesn't come with a countdown clock or a villain. It's a story about what is actually shifting inside the House of Windsor right now, while everyone is busy watching a brooch. Here is the part almost none of these viral videos ever mention. While cameras chase a brooch, the actual center of gravity inside the House of Windsor has been moving for years, in plain sight, documented by real reporters at real outlets. Charles became king in September 2022, already the oldest person ever to take the British throne. He arrived with a stated goal: a smaller, leaner monarchy, fewer working royals, tighter finances, a firmer answer to the modern question of what a hereditary institution is actually for. Within his first days as monarch, he granted William and Catherine the titles of Prince and Princess of Wales, the same titles Diana once held, placing them one formal step from the throne itself. Along with the title came the Duchy of Cornwall, the private estate that funds William's household, passed down the same way it has passed to every heir apparent for generations. Titles change hands. So do the assets and the symbols attached to them. That transfer draws far less attention than a piece of jewelry, even though it matters considerably more. Then, in January 2024, Buckingham Palace confirmed Charles was undergoing treatment for cancer. 2 months later, Kensington Palace confirmed Catherine was undergoing cancer treatment of her own. Two of the most central figures in the modern monarchy, diagnosed within the same season, both stepping back from public duties at once, a coincidence no palace communications team could have planned for. Both have since returned to public work. Catherine confirmed she had reached remission roughly a year later and has gradually rebuilt her schedule since. Charles has continued treatment while maintaining a full calendar of engagements, according to palace statements, though the exact nature and timeline of that treatment has not been made fully public, which is itself standard practice for the institution. Yahoo +2. What has changed, visibly and measurably, is who shows up to do the work. William and Catherine have taken on a noticeably heavier share of official engagements over the past 2 years, according to court circular records that log royal duties. Royal commentators have suggested this reflects deliberate succession planning rather than accident, a gradual handover happening in public, engagement by engagement, long before any formal transfer of the crown. None of this has been announced as a plan. It doesn't need to be. The pattern is visible to anyone counting appearances. This is the actual shift a jewelry rumor accidentally points toward. Not a fight over a brooch, but a question about who defines the monarchy's meaning as it changes hands, quietly, from a king managing his health to a prince and princess still building their public identity in real time. Royal symbols only mean something because someone with authority says they do, which raises an uncomfortable question this investigation has been circling since the first chapter. If the meaning of the crown itself is up for renegotiation, what happens to Camilla, the woman standing at the center of a story that was never really about her? London, 1993. A private phone call between Camilla and Charles gets intercepted, leaked, and printed across national newspapers within days. The press names it Camillagate before the ink even dries. Overnight, a private citizen becomes the most despised woman in Britain, her name printed beside words like homewrecker and ruin in headlines she never gets to answer back to. That reputation does not fade on its own. In 1997, Diana dies in a Paris car crash, and whatever sympathy the public still owes Camilla evaporates completely. For years afterward, she can barely appear in public without security concerns trailing her. Buckingham Palace, according to royal biographers who covered the period, treats her not as an asset but as a liability to be managed quietly, kept out of frame, kept away from cameras whenever possible. Then something shifts, slowly, deliberately, the way institutions move when they have decades to work with rather than months. In 1999, Charles and Camilla appear together publicly for the first time outside the Ritz Hotel in London, a moment widely reported at the time as a calculated first step rather than a spontaneous one, timed and photographed with precision. Charity patronages follow, chosen carefully, unlikely to generate controversy. Public appearances increase, one small, unremarkable engagement at a time, rebuilding a reputation the way a mason rebuilds a wall, brick by brick, with no shortcuts available. By 2005, the marriage itself happens quietly, a civil ceremony rather than a grand cathedral wedding, and Camilla takes the title Duchess of Cornwall instead of Princess of Wales, a title she was technically entitled to and chose not to use out of deference to Diana's memory. The real turn comes in 2022. In a recorded message released for her Platinum Jubilee, just months before her death, Queen Elizabeth II states her sincere wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort when Charles becomes king. It is, according to royal historians, one of the most consequential endorsements the late Queen ever gave. A year later, at the coronation, the word consort quietly disappears from the title altogether. Here is the harder question underneath all of it. Was 3 decades of public anger really about Camilla? The specific choices she made as one woman inside one marriage? Or was she absorbing something larger, standing in for a public's grief over Diana that never had anywhere else to go? A lightning rod for feelings that had no other target left standing. That question does not stay theoretical for long, because it leads directly to the other woman standing inside this same jewelry, the one who never had a scandal to recover from, and still cannot seem to escape the comparison of the 22nd of March 2024. Catherine, Princess of Wales, sits in front of a camera at Windsor and tells millions of people watching that she has cancer. No palace spokesperson reads a statement on her behalf, no filtered photograph, no press pool at a distance, just her voice, direct, explaining that she and William chose to wait until their children could be told first, in their own home, before the rest of the world found out. That single decision says more about Catherine's approach to power than a decade of official engagements could. Diana broke the monarchy's silence by defying it, giving interviews the palace never approved, saying things the institution never wanted said, taking real risks with an unpredictable institution that had no playbook for a princess speaking her own mind. Catherine breaks silence differently. She works from inside the structure rather than against it, choosing exactly when to speak and exactly how much to reveal, treating information itself as something to be managed with the same discipline as a public appearance. Royal commentators have suggested she operates with more communications instinct than almost anyone else currently inside the family, though the palace has never confirmed anything close to an official title for that role. Her public projects follow the same pattern. Her early childhood research initiative, built over several years before its public launch, focuses on the first 5 years of a child's life and how they shape everything after. It is not a glamorous cause. It does not generate the kind of headlines a scandal generates. But it is entirely her own, built from research rather than borrowed from Diana's causes or Camilla's charities, a platform nobody handed her. This is the part the viral videos consistently miss. Catherine is not spending her time trying to outshine a woman who died before she ever set foot inside the family. She is building something that has almost nothing to do with Diana at all, brick by brick, on her own foundation, on her own timeline. Some royal watchers have floated a question the palace has never addressed directly, whether Catherine might one day follow the same path Camilla did, quietly becoming known simply as Queen rather than Queen Consort, when that day eventually arrives. Nobody currently in a position to confirm it has said a word either way. What actually decides the outcome of this entire case has nothing to do with who wore what or who noticed it first. It has everything to do with which version of these three women the public decides to remember, and that decision is still being made in real time, one viral video at a time. 5 different channels, 5 nearly identical thumbnails, 5 versions of the same fake banquet, published within the same 2 weeks, each one pulling in a substantial audience before anyone official says a single word. Follow the money, and the picture gets uncomfortable fast. None of these creators need the story to be true. They need it to be watched for exactly long enough to trigger a payout from an advertising system that rewards attention regardless of accuracy. A thumbnail promising a royal meltdown outperforms a calm explainer about jewelry history by a wide margin, and the platforms hosting these videos generally do not penalize a creator for being wrong. They penalize a creator for being boring. That single incentive explains almost everything about how this story grew, and why it will almost certainly happen again with a different object and a different woman next month. Compare that machine to how an actual royal household operates. Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace employ communications teams whose entire job is minimizing drama, not manufacturing it. A leaked confrontation at a state banquet would represent a communications catastrophe, the kind of event that ends careers inside the institution and dominates front pages for weeks. From a public relations standpoint, palace insiders and royal reporters alike have long pointed out that the monarchy's incentive runs in the opposite direction of a viral creator's incentive. One side wants the story contained quietly, before it spreads any further. The other side needs it to spread as wide and as fast as physically possible. So who actually benefits from Catherine and Camilla appearing locked in conflict? Not Catherine, whose actual public record shows no pattern of public confrontation with anyone in the family, no leaked tension, no anonymous quotes attributed to her side of any dispute. Not Camilla, who spent 2 decades rebuilding a reputation she is unlikely to risk over a piece of jewelry worth a fraction of what her public image took 30 years to earn back. Not the palace, which has said nothing at all, the institution's oldest and most reliable defense. The only party that profits is the pipeline itself, the channel that posted first, the 4 that copied it within days. The algorithm that decided outrage deserved more reach than the truth ever could. Diana's memory becomes raw material in that pipeline, mined for engagement rather than honored the way her actual work and her actual words deserve. That should bother anyone who claims to care about her legacy more than it apparently does. The evidence has been building for 8 chapters now, and it all points toward a single, uncomfortable verdict. The gavel comes down on this case with a verdict nobody selling the original story wanted. No leaked footage of a halted banquet has surfaced anywhere, in 8 chapters of digging. No named guest, no palace staffer, no credentialed reporter covering that engagement has confirmed a single detail of the confrontation the videos describe. No official record shows Princess Catherine standing, speaking, or intervening in any capacity that evening. Every specific claim in the original accusation, tested one at a time against the actual evidence, collapses under the weight of its own absence, the same way it always does once someone bothers to check. What survives the collapse is something more interesting than the rumor ever was. The brooch is real. Its history is real, traceable across 3 separate reigns and 160 years of documented ownership, from a Danish princess who never got photographed wearing it, to Diana, who redefined it, to Camilla, who inherited a scandal alongside a piece of jewelry, to Catherine, who now carries it forward without the baggage either predecessor had to fight through. That history did not need a fictional banquet to be worth telling. It was already worth telling on its own, long before anyone attached a countdown clock to it. Here is the actual lesson sitting underneath all of this, the one the countdown clock videos will never slow down long enough to reach. People do not fight over objects. A brooch cannot betray anyone. A brooch cannot hold a grudge, plot a comeback, or send a message on its own. People fight over what an object is allowed to mean, who gets to assign that meaning, and who gets erased when someone else's version of that meaning wins out in public. Diana's meaning was rebellion against an institution that wanted her silent and smiling. Camilla's meaning was survival inside an institution that spent years wanting her gone entirely. Catherine's meaning, still being written in real time, looks like continuity, an attempt to hold the whole structure together while it changes hands from one generation to the next, quietly, without a single leaked confrontation to her name. None of that required a manufactured scandal. It was sitting in the historical record the entire time, in newspaper archives and auction house records and old palace statements, waiting for anyone willing to look past the countdown clock and actually check. The case is closed. But closing this one case does not shut down the machine that built it, and that machine is already loading its next target, aiming at the next photograph, the next piece of jewelry, the next woman who never asked to be cast as a villain. Go back to the photograph that started all of this. Camilla, a brooch, a room full of cameras. Strip away the fake countdown clock and the invented confrontation, and what is actually left in that image is quieter and stranger, and far more human than the rumor ever gave it credit for being. 3 women wore that same piece of jewelry across 160 years, and not one of them chose the moment they'd be remembered for. Diana didn't choose to become a global symbol of compassion cut short by a car crash in a Paris tunnel. Camilla didn't choose 3 decades of public anger before she ever got the chance to earn public trust on her own terms. Catherine didn't choose to spend her entire adult life measured against a woman she never got to meet in a role neither of them applied for. The monarchy itself is going through the same reckoning, quietly, one handover of duty at a time, as a king manages his health and a prince and princess build the identity they'll need for whatever comes next. That transition was never going to announce itself with a countdown clock. Real change rarely does. In the end, the most powerful royal symbols are not the jewels kept inside vaults. They are the stories people choose to attach to them. That's the real case. Closed, evidence and all. If this kind of investigation is what you come here for, the truth over the countdown clock, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story is already being built, and it deserves the same level of scrutiny this one just got. Drop your take in the comments below. Someone else reading this thread might need to